What is the relationship of the body, the mind, and the true self, the jiva? In the Bhagavad Gita, which is 700 verses of truth, the first principle that is described is what is our identity. As the embodied soul is passing through childhood, youth, and old age, similarly, at the time of death, that spirit, that jiva, that soul, the true you and me, will enter into another body. Nahanyate hanyamane sarite. For the soul there is no death. It's unborn and eternal. But we're living within this body. Why is there greed? And why from that greed is there so much disrespect and exploitation, not only to other people and other species, but to Mother Nature herself? The testimony is that we will live for other people's happiness. If you're not living for other people's happiness, that means we are disconnected from our own self-interest. And this has been the principle taught by all the great spiritual leaders throughout history of the entire world. We're all children of the same source. What is Dharma? There are so many ideas. Some people call it religion, occupation, nature. Srimad Bhagavatam describes Savaipo Samparo Dharma Ito Aptiranochi. Ahoitiki Apravihataya Yatma Suprasitati. Dharma is what makes us happy. But what actually makes us happy? The Supreme Dharma is that which brings about a love that is expressed through seva, or service, to the Supreme Truth, to God. We may call Ram or Krishna. Such loving service must be unmotivated by selfishness, egoism, unmotivated by the tendency to exploit, and uninterrupted by circumstances. That loving service will completely satisfy the true self. The same principle in how we actually are concerned and activated by that concern to the well-being of others. That is what is truly our well-being. It's due to disconnect from our own nature and our own real self-interest that we don't have a proper relationship with others. The idea of karuna, or compassion, is the basic principle of Dharma. Loving service is expressed through compassion. Handmaiden needs to put the food in the mouth, and then the mouth has to chew it. And then if the food just stays there in the mouth and keeps chewing it, it's not going to be really happy. The mouth has to cooperate with other mechanisms of the body, and it has to be swallowed by the throat, and then it has to go into the stomach. And then it's distributed to the whole body. So real happiness is not a selfish, isolated thing. Real happiness is based on relationship. Just within our own bodies, there are so many organs, senses, and functions. And a healthy body is one where all these different components have a favorable, respectful relationship with one another. Seldom do we think about that. Sometimes when you go to a doctor, he'll help you remember that. But it is a reality. And our own little body is allegorical and symbolic of the whole creation. And this is the idea of karuna and seva. The idea of compassion toward others is what's healthy for me. And what's healthy for me actually will inspire me and empower me towards seva, compassion to others. So our beloved Guru Srila Prabhupada is taking this message of Bhagavad Gita and trying to present it to the world in such a way that we can become enlightened. And one of his foundational principles was teaching people how to live in harmony with the environment. Because everything else is disconnected, even if it's philosophically precise. Because we're all dependent on the environment. It's very interesting. When I first came to India, I was 19 years old. And I was looking for truth. I was born and raised in the United States of America. I never met a person from India until I reached the border of India. In those days, there was a lot of isolation. What I found here, and why from the moment I came into India, and more as I was studying the culture and the richness, is Mother India is giving the wisdom, the vision, and the culture in which we can have a deep understanding of relationships. Harmonizing the relationship between the body, the mind, and our true self. Harmonizing our temporary needs and our temporary wants with the true well-being of our true self. Harmonizing through responsible living, how we're making a positive difference in a sustainable way to humanity, to all living beings, and to the foundational motherly principle of everyone, or nature. And I saw that when I met my Guru Srila Prabhupada. He was translating Bhagavad Gita in Upanishads and translating Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it became the largest publishing house with the most distribution of Vedic literatures in the history of the world. My Guru would say, with all the properties and all of the accomplishments that we have, he said, I would trade it all if I could get one person to turn toward Krishna. How did that impact me when I heard this? That means at every moment, how we're affecting other people, how we're concerned with other people. That is affecting the whole world. And when we're trying to do very big things, but we're not concerned with the small things, then we're disconnected. And similarly, if we're trying to deal with small things, but it's not in harmony with what's best for the big things, then we're disconnected. So essentially what I'm speaking about is spiritual values. Whatever knowledge, whether it's philosophy or scriptural knowledge or academic knowledge or technological, scientific knowledge, its value is according to the character that we are striving to live in harmony with. So he was distributing so many millions of books, but at the same time, he was so concerned when he came to one farm community. There was a lot of money at the time. They were bringing all kinds of very, very delicious foods from other places. He said, no. Give me the weeds that are growing here. If you're not growing anything here, just give me the weeds. As a leader, he was trying to teach us that these small things are so important. Before coming here, I had the great opportunity of being with the IIT's Goshala and seeing these beautiful cows. Or ignorance of what is our relationship with the motherland and what is the relationship we have with all other children of the motherland. Sanatana Dharma is when we take responsibility to actually care about the well-being of others. And when we actually care, then we will make the effort to find out and then to put into practice how we could best be of service. The bottleneck is selfishness. And and arrogance. And Dharma when we take responsibility to rise above our own propensities for selfishness and arrogance. Human life doesn't mean it happens automatically, because we're all conditioned by these conditionings of selfishness and arrogance. It's all around us and it's within us. Tapasya means that we're willing to make our choices in life on a higher principle. Samsivya Haritosha. In our tradition, we chant the names of God in a similar way as our sewage refining brings the quality of polluted sewage water. All of the contaminants actually help other things grow. And the end result is the water is clear and transparent. So similarly, by chanting God's names, by associating with people who have these higher values, we become purified. And then with our purified consciousness, which is above the very very cheap and spiritually poverty-stricken state of selfishness. From a spiritual perspective, arrogance means spiritual poverty. But yet in today's world, people are really excited about being arrogant because it seems that that's a great accomplishment, something to be arrogant about. But it's spiritual poverty, and when we have this value, then we'll work even harder and strive even harder because we have a much higher and more meaningful purpose.
A desire for anything and achieve that one spirit, which is the main soul. So why we are going for happiness and things which make our life more difficult? Because if we want happiness, we have a desire. Why we have a desire? Why can't we live a life without happiness, without anything? Because Eric said that we have to help others. What if we are in a world where we are the only one? So is it not possible to be happy in that world? So that's the question.
To desire happiness is a desire. I believe that's what you're saying. To desire to be beyond happiness is also a desire. So somehow or other, we're all stuck with desires. And just to pretend that there's no desires, or to pretend that there is a state of desirelessness, we have to cross the bridge to reach that transcendental state. And what Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad Gita, and what all of our great Vedic scriptures are teaching, is to actually be in a state of desireless. Doesn't mean we don't have desires. It means that our desires are liberating, purifying, and expressions of love. If a mother has a little baby and the baby is crying in need, does the mother think, well, I want to be desireless, so let the baby go through its own karma. Higher than desireless on this material level is love. Yes? Love is the deepest, most liberating, and fullest sense of desireless. God is desireless, materially. But why does the Lord come to this world again and again and again to teach us? He's desireless because there's no selfish, arrogant, material desires based in ignorance. But the Lord comes as an activist out of love, out of a desire to help other people be liberated in that love. Was Hanuman desireless? Materially, he was desireless. But still, he was jumping over oceans, and he was lifting mountains, he was fighting wars. He was desireless in the sense that he was not seeking his own arrogant happiness. He was seeking the happiness of Sita and the happiness of Ram. And ultimately, the happiness of Sita and Ram is the happiness of all living beings. But that happiness is not in these temporary experiences of the mind and senses. It's in reconnecting with the love of God and the love of all beings that is inherent within the soul. To desire that is greater than being desireless. And to be desireless is quite impossible for all of us. So rather than trying to be desireless, desire in harmony. That is the challenge that is upon all of us. How to educate and inspire such people to understand and to appreciate that life in the farms and life in the villages is something sustainable and wonderful. In many ways, in the name of modern progress, society has disempowered the people in the rural communities. And that is unsustainable. And it is our responsibility in the name of God and in the name of Dharma to actually give people the appreciation of how important it really is to live in these rural communities and raise their families and have an income, an economy, and a lifestyle that's truly fulfilling. Many of the people you're speaking about have simply, over generations, forgot the beauty of what God has given them. And Govardhan Eco Village, which is our really small and we could say an insignificant attempt, but still, even doing something insignificant is infinitely significant if it's done with sincerity. lawyers, PhDs, serving hand to hand with simple farmers and going into the villages with doctors, going to teach, to inspire and share. In such a way that people can really appreciate what they have. Again, it's a disconnect. People have land, but how to actually be happy and prosperous with that land.
Unhappy. So how to find peace there? Because finally we are funded by the taxpayers of this country. So many students are here. So how to feel that, how to navigate in there with so much surrounding unhappiness? You get my question?
After I give an answer, you could tell me if I got your question. There was a very great Acharya, or saint, named Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He wrote a particular line that very much addresses how we could deal with all the unhappiness of the world and not be depressed. There is so much unhappiness. There is so much conflict, poverty, mental health issues. If we objectively look at the world, it's really a mess. So one tendency is, I'm just going to deal with what makes me happy and my loved ones happy, and I'm not going to worry about the rest of the world. But that's quite shallow. And the other is, I do have to think about the rest of the world, and therefore I'm going to go, and we go into depression because it's a reality. What can we do about it? We seem helpless. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained, where there's great need, there's a great opportunity to serve. Paradukha Dukhi, actually that Professor Krishna told me to speak on this subject, so I'm being reminded. Paradukhi means, Dukha Dukhi means when we feel another person's happiness to be my happiness and another person's suffering to be my suffering. So when there's so many people suffering, how can I be happy? Along with that feeling and concern for other people's difficulties, if we are actually activated with sincerity to be the change we want to see in the world, the inner satisfaction of the self is discovered. When we see problems, it gives us an opportunity to help, to serve. And the real happiness of life is not that there's no problems around. The real happiness of life, from a spiritual perspective, is when we appreciate that opportunity to serve and make a difference. I understand your